I'm Josh. I'm from FYZICAL Saint Peters in St. Peters, Missouri. Here's our address. We just opened in June of 2025, and I want to talk about avoiding falls today and why it's important to avoid falls overall. It's pretty common sense. As we get older, we realize it, but I want to talk about why falls matter, prevention strategies, and how we can help at FYZICAL Saint Peters, and also give you some clues on how to prevent falls yourself. So my education is listed here. I don't need to get into everything, but I've been in healthcare since really I was in college studying health science, exercise science at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. So I went to University at Oklahoma Wesleyan, and then I went to Missouri State University for a doctorate of physical therapy, and then I studied public health and worked in the public health service. Found my way back to St. Louis, near where I grew up in Warrenton, and I do vestibular rehab, lymphedema therapy, and we can even be do clinical instruction at our clinic in St. Peters. So
I'm gonna sit here.
yeah, fine. Come, you can sit in front if you like.
You can sit with me.
You get a better view.
She can't see very good.
Oh,
Then come. You can come. You want to come up front? Get a better view of the screen.
If I bring my walker in.
Yeah, I can help you.
Because I won't do much with a cane.
Why don't I give you a hand over here? I can help you back to your walker.
Okay, thank you.
So you can see on this slide up here that this lists the top 10 causes of death in the United
you
States.
sit next to your friend, or you want to sit next to me?
You put this one down. You can have any one you want. He said so.
There you go, perfect.
Thank you.
Mhm.
There you go.
So, top 10 causes of death in the United States, and I've highlighted accidents or unintentional injuries because that's the one that includes falls. So this list is put out by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta. They're always concerned with, figuring out what is killing people and how do we prevent that. So heart disease is the number one, cancer is number two. It's been that way for years and years. It used to be back in the early 19th century, so like the early 1900s, infectious diseases used to kill more people than heart disease or cancer. People didn't typically survive long enough to die of those things. And it also may have been that people didn't know, how to diagnose cancer as well as we do now, that kind of stuff. So, but it's interesting now that, infectious disease has gone way down as a cause of death thanks to germ theory and immunizations. But here's what we're gonna kind of isolate today, is talking about the fall risk. So we're gonna break down this number, this third leading cause of death, accidents or unintentional injuries. We're gonna break it down and see what it's made of. And those unintentional injuries include unintentional poisonings, which would be overdose deaths, unintentional fall deaths, and then motor vehicle traffic accidents. So unintentional fall deaths in the United States cause approximately 47,000 deaths a year, depending on the year. And this kind of shows you the potential life lost because of these causes of death. So without going into all these, you can see that unintentional injuries actually cause more years of life lost. So we can look at cancer and we can look at heart disease. They tend to hurt older people who typically they're already in their elderly years. But the unintentional injuries, these two, the unintentional poisoning and the motor vehicle traffic accidents, affect young people. Very sad, and it causes more years of life lost. So this is showing you the number 3 cause of death in the United States and what makes up that category. And this is showing you the years of life that are lost as a result of these. And so if we look at falls, 72,000 falls. So sorry, not 72,000 falls. There's 72,000 years of potential life lost due to falls in 2020. That's what this is showing you. So even though falls affect mostly the elderly, it's still causing up to 72,000 years of potential life lost that we estimate people could have lived longer if they had not fallen. So it's kind of a confusing slide, but I like to try to break down what makes up unintentional injuries and then how it's relevant to you. So we want to prevent the loss of life, the loss of those years. And the way we do that is by addressing fall risk. So another busy slide here, but the Center for Disease Control has a lot of different strategies that I'm sure you've heard a lot about already. And we'll talk about briefly why falls are such a big catastrophe. So every 11 seconds, an older adult is treated in an emergency room for falls. 67.7 billion medical costs are associated with falls. Falls are the leading cause of both fatal and non-fatal injuries in older adults. 1 in 4 adults age 65 plus fall each year. So you can see that it's a big cost. It causes a loss of life, and then it also is extremely painful, right? It's a painful process to go through the rehab. If you fall and you break a bone and have to be hospitalized. This is an interesting map. Not to get too in depth, but you can see here that this is showing you the darker the color of the state, the more falls that they tend to have. So this is, you can see age-adjusted percentage of older adults, 65 years, reporting 1 or more unintentional falls during the past year. So what we're saying here is this is the percentage. So this is the percentage of older adults that have had 1 or more falls in the past year. The darker the state, the higher the percentage. So this is the percentage of falls here. You see Missouri's in blue, so we're at 30 to 38% of older adults report reporting 1 or more unintentional falls in the past year. And then you can see here, this is the fall death rates per 100,000 adults. So Missouri's, for whatever reason, we have 30 to 38% reporting a fall, but we only have 74 to 97 per 100,000. So in other words, we have quite a few people that are falling, but we don't have as high of a death rate as some place like Minneapolis, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Montana. Exactly. So this is what I'm trying to point out is that, like, what do you think might lead to this map where the darker states have a higher death rate due to falls, and then the darker blue states have more falls over here? So what would be some of those factors you would think would be? Laura already called one out. Any of you have any ideas why there'd be more falls in the darker states?
They got ice, a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
And older people have a tendency to walk more than drive, or, I mean, it's a short distance to the grocery store, so why not just walk, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it could be, like you mentioned, maybe someone lives close to the grocery store, they have to walk more, right?
Or a neighbor.
Exactly. There could be accessibility, right? It could be socioeconomic status. So how much money a person has. Do they have a vehicle to drive, or are they having to walk precariously during the winter, right? Do they have a garage, or do they have to go outside and warm up their car? It could be something simple like that. It could also be that there's more elderly people in these states than other states, right? And so, but it just depends. There's all kinds of conditions, but the elderly population, it depends on the type of elderly population, because the population shouldn't skew it that much. But it's an interesting map. So ice is a big part of it, right? And that's one thing we talk about in physical therapy, is avoiding falls because of ice and the winter conditions. And then also trying to help people even though they may not have as much resources as others. So the most common outcomes of a fall are loss of independence, so having to depend on others more for mobility, and then fractures, financial loss, and then also can lead to more debility over time. So you can have more and more issues that lead to other health problems. So what we want to do is what causes falls and talk about how to prevent them now. So we can break this down, not to go too deep into the weeds, but there's physical factors. So I like to call those the internal factors. How strong are your muscles? How balanced are you? How is your vestibular system functioning? Are you having dizziness on a regular basis? Can you feel your feet well, or are your feet numb, or do you have neuropathy? So those are like the internal factors, your body. Then there's external factors like the medication you take. So that's like what you're consuming. Are you hydrated? Are your medications making you more dizzy? And then there's environmental factors. So if you have a lot of clutter in your room, things that you can trip over, or poor lighting. If you have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and you're in a hurry to get to the bathroom, that can increase your risk of falls. So, and then there's also behavioral or lifestyle factors. So people who tend to try to do too many things at once have a higher risk of falling than people who are really focused and intentional about their routine in their day. Alcohol intake, all these things, sedentary lifestyle, people who sit a lot, their hamstrings get tight. It's harder for them to move in a limber and mobile way. So all those things factor in. So we want to talk about how to prevent falls. So here's where the rubber really meets the road. What can you do to help prevent the cost, injury, loss of years of life due to falls? So there's simple things you can do. Eliminating throw rugs, electrical cords, clutter, adding light at night. You can have a night light. Non-slip surfaces, especially in the shower, are really good. Grab bars you can use. A lot of these things are already accessible here. And then, choosing proper footwear. So I do not like slippers or any type of footwear that doesn't really have a good heel on it that wraps around. I want something that hugs the back of the foot, not something that's going to just allow you to shuffle your feet or encourage you to shuffle your feet. I think slippers are one of the worst things because they really encourage you to walk without bringing your toes up, which is going to increase the likelihood of you tripping on something and falling. So I'm against slippers, and high heels are really not the best either, due to the way that they decrease your base of support, and they also can tighten your Achilles tendon if you wear them a lot, but it just depends on how high they are and how long you wear them. They can be tripping hazards too, because they're so thin, but there's all kinds of things you can use. So we talked about the factors in yourself. What can you do to become more fit? If you need to build muscle, what exercises can you do? If you need to improve your balance, what can you do for that? So that's physical therapy, that's where we come in. We also can help you with external aids. So if you really need to be on a higher level assistive device, I see 3 types of assistive devices here in this room. I see a cane, I see a walker, and I see a wheelchair. And so it's very important for risk management that you use the appropriate assistive device for your level of function. If you're not using a wheelchair and you really need to use a wheelchair, you're going to increase your fall risk. If you're using a walker and you really could do well on a cane, then you're probably increasing your fall risk as well, because you're becoming dependent on that walker when you really just need a cane. But it takes a little bit of wisdom and risk management to know which type of assistive device is most appropriate. So what we do is, at FYZICAL and St. Peters, we give you an individualized treatment plan. We assess you. I'll put you through a bunch of tests. One of the most objective tests we can do is your gait speed. How fast do you walk? And then what does your gait look like? So we can look at how you walk, how fast you walk. Other things we can do is specifically break down what we talked about before. How strong are your muscles? Which muscles are weak? How is your range of motion? Which muscles are tight? How is your balance? Which system is causing you to lose your balance? So we look at the 3 systems: feeling, the 3 major balance systems. So the sense of touch, your vestibular system, which is basically like a 3D level that lives in your head and tells you where your head's at when your eyes are closed. And then the last one is the eyes. So those 3 systems: eyesight, your sense of orientation in space, and then your sense of touch, really make up those 3 major balance systems that we assess But we also assess the muscles and the range of motion and other systems like your reflexes. We assess, is there something going wrong with the brain, right? So there's different things we look at. And we give you a program to try to improve your performance. We will help you, get set up with the appropriate assistive device if that's what you need, right? So what I want to do right now is just kind of like see if anybody has any questions about concerns, like personally, or if you don't want to share, that's fine, but any questions about falls, any questions about fall prevention, or physical therapy and kind of how it can help.
One thing that doctors don't do when you're younger is increase the calcium. And calcium is so important, and none of my doctors had ever told me that I should be taking calcium. But I did, because it was a thing that my family had acid reflux, and so we had calcium all the time. And when I got older, it always had comes with me, and I drank a lot of milk. And just for the record, I have a drop foot, and I have fallen maybe a dozen times. And I've got black and blue all over me, and inside my mouth was black and blue, but I never broke a bone.
That's good.
And they couldn't figure out why. And they did a couple of x-rays because they couldn't figure out how I could. But it's calcium in milk, and calcium in things like Tums.
Mm-hmm.
And if the doctors would only stress that, and if people would tell their family, get calcium for your kids, because I know by experience that that helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's what did it, and I may break a bone tomorrow, but I mean, all these times I've fallen. So I think it's good if you stress calcium for people.
That's awesome. Yeah, so basically, that's part of the, what we're consuming. So it's kind of like the external. So if we
Yes,
go back
that's
to the
what they
list
have.
that we talked about, I'm gonna go back to that list. And then calcium would fall under the medical or medication factors.
Yeah, but
Right.
it doesn't mention calcium.
Yes, so,
Cause I got macular
I think
degeneration.
that would fall under behavioral and lifestyle, wouldn't it?
oh yeah, poor nutrition, so lack of, so yeah, I mean, they have some crossover here.
Yeah, cause
So-
I never heard him say that particular thing.
A lot of people are taking supplemental calcium now, right, as they get older, and
They should, but
vitamin D.
the people I've talked to are not.
Yeah.
So, I have a question. So, if like a person is, like this young lady here, she's fallen several times, she's got drop foot. Is there anything that can be done for that at this point in time, or is this something she's gonna deal with for the rest of her life?
Yeah, so there's some things that are chronic and that we are gonna deal with for the rest of our life, but it becomes a decision of, do you want to use what we call an ankle foot orthosis to help keep your toes up? Or do you have a little bit of, what we call dorsiflexion, raising the toes? If you still have a little bit of function there and you wanna preserve it, then sometimes what you need to do is just really work on that muscle and that brain muscle connection, so the neurological side of it. And so you may need to practice raising those toes more. And some people, they don't wanna go to an ankle foot orthosis because it provides too much assistance and then the muscle gets weaker, right? So it's the same discussion as with canes or with walkers. You wanna be really intentional about not giving too much support, but if it's a high fall risk and you really are having a difficult time raising those toes at all, then an ankle foot orthosis becomes something that's really can be useful. The other thing is just practicing more other strategies to avoid getting that toe caught. So being very intentional about reminding yourself to raise your leg higher to compensate with the hip flexors, and that can help a lot. The hamstrings even, just bending the knee a little bit more.
The doctor said be sure and pay attention to your knee. If your knee is up, don't think about your foot. Just make sure your knee is up.
That's exactly what exactly. And it's hard because we forget.
Yeah,
You get
oh,
a rush.
absolutely.
Right.
Where I was gonna go with that is that, so she's using a cane now, and she's gotta worry about bringing her.
I got a walker outside the door when I
And,
came in.
yeah, so, she's worried about bringing her legs up and her knees up. does physical therapy or can physical therapy strengthen that, muscle for her so that she could literally get to the point where she's just automatically doing that without even thinking about it?
Yeah, so there's lots of things that can help with this too, besides an AFO and just thinking about it. So there's also something, if you want to get really advanced, there's, what is it called? Functional electromuscular stimulation. So it's like basically whenever you step on your heel, your toes, it turns on the electrical stimulation and activates the tibialis anterior muscle that raises your toes. So that's that's a machine that can just, every time you step, can bring your toes up for you, right? We can do electrical stimulation in the clinic to try to strengthen that muscle too, but that's something that you need to keep doing, right? So you can either do the electrical stimulation functionally, or you can do it in the clinic to try to strengthen that muscle. The best thing I would recommend, the most practical thing, is just getting more practice with actively raising it, and then choosing an appropriate assistive device, whether that be an AFO or just knowing when you need to use the cane versus the walker. If you have any throw rubs in your room or anything like that, you want to remove those. Anything that you can trip over and catch your toe on.
And I take everything out.
That would be good to get rid of those. And practicing, like there's different exercises that are really helpful, like the alternating toe taps to a stair. That can be really helpful because it's helping you do that motion. So one thing in the clinic that we do is we try to give you lots of opportunities with this harness to fail, to be able to basically, it's like you would fall, but the overhead system catches you in the physical clinics. It's one of the best tools we have. So we harness you in, and if you trip on your leg and you start to fall this way, the system is gonna catch you. So it won't let you fall. And then you can think, okay, what did I do just now? Did I trip on my foot? Why did I trip on my foot? Was I not picking my knee up as high as I should have? Was it that I just wasn't picking my toes up? What was it that really caused this? Am I feeling unbalanced in my head? Am I drifting to the right? So we can assess it there, kind of analyze why you fell, and then immediately practice to try to correct it. And we do, right now, 60-minute sessions. So it gives us a lot of time to do a lot of work to try to help you. So, some of the tools we use briefly are these goggles. I'll just go over really quick, and if you have any other questions, we'll talk about it. But these goggles allow us to look at your eyes, and we put you through various positions, vestibular testing.
Yeah.
One of the tests is called the Dix-Hall Pike maneuver. So we basically lay you down with your head turned one way to see if you get dizzy. So if you've ever had any dizziness in bed, where you wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning with a lot of dizziness and the room is spinning, that's what we assess with these goggles. We assess those symptoms. And we look at your eyes, we record what your eyes do, and then based upon that, we prescribe either a maneuver or other treatment.
Hey down there, you're making more noise.
I'm sorry.
And then we
She's talking to me.
have, this is just a handheld dynamometer that I use. So if you have a muscle weakness, I can see how many pounds of force you have in that muscle, and we can try to improve that strength over the course of your treatment. Treatment usually lasts anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, anywhere from 1 to 3 visits a week.
And what does that cost you?
This?
Well, no.
The
session.
treatment? It depends on your insurance. So
Okay.
sometimes it'll cost you nothing, and other times it'll be a copay. It can be like 20, depends on the person, the insurance, 20, 40, so it just depends. Our cash
This
rates,
is a round figure.
yeah, our cash, so I would say, if your insurance is with us, I would say your copay will usually not be more than 30 per visit. And then if you want to come in with our cash-based rate, it's 125 for the evaluation and 95 for follow-ups. So, and those are
Use your
hour-long
insurance.
appointments.
Use your insurance when you can, for sure, right?
So, these are the VR goggles that a lot of the kids are using now for video games and such, but we use it to help train for motion sensitivity especially. So we'll put you through we'll put these on and have you balance while you're looking at a moving background. And that can help if you have a lot of, car sickness or things like that.
You know, we start to fall on the rug,
Yeah,
most of us. And I watch other people go up and down with their walkers, and they have the same problem. The shoes that we're wearing today, that everybody wears, they get caught in the rug. Of course, it's something we're doing with our
To pick your feet up.
foot.
absolutely, yeah, so like our shoes have a lot of traction these days,
Right.
and especially if you get the toe box part, that's the rubber, caught, it's gonna start to throw you forward. So it's really about picking those toes up a lot, right? Advancing that foot. And that's why we do exercise. It's because, so exercise, I like to use the example of, I call it the antelope and the lion. So if an antelope is being chased by a lion, it's either gonna get caught and eaten, or it's gonna escape. And if it barely escapes, what it does is it gets a little stronger for next time. And that's how animals survive in the wild, when they have predators like lions coming after them. That's what exercise is. If you do not push yourself to your limit, your body is not gonna upregulate. It's not gonna prepare you for the next disaster. So basically, if we are not making progress from yesterday, we are regressing a little bit. So what I tell people in therapy is don't compare yourself to who you were 20 years ago, but compare yourself to who you were yesterday and try to be a little bit better today, right? And if one day you're a little bit worse than yesterday, don't beat yourself up about it, just try to do better tomorrow. And that's how we make improvements in rehabilitation. That's how we avoid those trips and that toe dragging, is by intentionally pushing ourselves to our limits, but in a safe way. And that's what this harness allows us to do, is to push yourself to your limits, even lose your balance, but you don't fall because we got you hooked up to the ceiling. And then you can learn, and we know that you learn faster if you have immediate feedback. It's like if somebody's learning to drive, they've got immediate feedback. A teenager trying to learn how to drive, they know if they're gonna go off the road, the instructor grabs the wheel, turns it back on the road and says, that was terrible, here's what you need to do. And that's what we do in therapy.